Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Big Bros podcast. If it is your first time joining, welcome. My name is Ilan, and I'm joined by my lovely friend and co-host, Jeremy. But more importantly, we are joined by Calista Clements, who is an Australian creator and commentator known for bringing common sense back into conversations around culture, politics, and the issues young people are actually facing here in Australia. Calista, thank you for joining the Big Bros podcast.
That was a nice introduction, guys. Thanks for having me.
It's our absolute pleasure. We've loved seeing what you've been doing in the space. I know we just mentioned off camera before that you started posting in October, and the rise to stardom it's been intense, hasn't it?
It's been great. It's been quick and really supportive, actually. But yeah, it's been a crazy few months, to say the least.
Did it kick up pretty quickly, or did it take some time? I mean, October wasn't long ago.
Yeah.
But did you find that maybe by not being a fence sitter, it actually boosted you up a fair bit quickly?
Massively. I think my commitment was 2 videos a day, hack it out. From October to December, I'm like, just grind it out. You have to go through that awkward phase of, family, friends start seeing you randomly speak about politics, the 50 followers to the 200 followers, and then it catches wind and far out it starts, blowing very quickly. So I think at one point I was going up by like 20,000 a month,
wow.
I think, for consecutive months, and it's slowed down a little bit, but it's still going fast. So there's an appetite. Yeah.
One of the taglines your taglines is bringing common sense back into the picture. If I was to ask you, when do you think common sense went out of the picture, what would you say?
I reckon COVID. Maybe COVID fried our brains a bit, that everyone just didn't come out of that quite straight again. But I don't know, I think maybe the rise to woke was the pre-COVID era, and then when people were locked in their houses, I don't know if they got too much social media and not enough socialization, that they all just started banding together and saying some weird stuff. So yeah, I would say the 2020 era is when things really shifted.
So that 2020 era is now 6 years ago, the time we're recording this. It's 2026, we're coming into May now. You only started posting in October 2025. So what were you doing for those 5-6 years, from 2020 onwards? Was there this burning passion kind of being generated then?
Yeah. What was I doing? God. Complaining about Daniel Andrews in the state of Victoria, getting really angry, rolled up, locked in my house for 2 years. You know how it is in Victoria. But 2020, I was at university, so I did a double major, international business and international politics, international relations, I should say. And that's, when the COVID period happened, I was studying, everything went remote. Actually, prior to that, I was in the US. I was actually going to go to college in the US, in Florida. Got the boot because you couldn't, renew your visas. So then I came back here and did hotel quarantine, which was insane. Like that in itself was really, really eerie to come back to Australia. Not having seen my family for about 4 months, to get put on a plane, people with hazmat suits spraying down the planes. It's like you're an alien. Straight into hotel quarantine, came out of that, lockdown, uni, and then you go to uni, and I quickly realised how insane socially and ideologically it was. You got posters up around the uni to join a communist club and to join the socialist club. And I remember piping up in a global economics class or something, and it was what's an alternative system to capitalism or something. And I kind of just said, well, there isn't one. Like, it's not going to work. No system's perfect, but that's just quite unrealistic. And I got completely shut down by my teacher. She's like, well, does anyone else have another less pessimistic view? And I was like, I thought that was just a really reasonable point of view. So yeah, that's when my brain started clocking. I was like, what is going on here? I didn't even know people preached communism, but you learn very quickly. So that's where it all started happening for me.
Do you remember when you first got into politics?
Yes. Well, I mean, I studied politics when I was in high school. Like, that was my burning passion. I'm a yapper. Like, I have always loved it. I did join the Liberal Party when I was 23, 24. I'm not a member of the party anymore, of any party, because that's just yeah, you don't want to be towing any lines, plus they are doing a really crappy job. So maybe my attitude towards them will turn around when they start switching on a bit. Sorry, any, Liberal Party members, but we say the truth here. And yeah, I just started getting involved, different groups, different people, found that with different affiliations, I was like, this is mad on the right and the left and everything. And I was like, I don't want to be a part of any of this actually. And that's where I started going down my more independent line, just to say my own thoughts, because I realised that change in politics is probably not going to be coming from our politicians or our government anytime soon. It's a matter of shifting attitudes, or at least emboldening people to say what they mean and mean what they say.
Oftentimes when our political views are formed, it's because of a specific issue or global event, and then seeing how people respond to that and listening and reading the commentary. Was there any specific issue for you that illuminated what you believed your political views were? Because I think in 2020, when the whole Black Lives Matter movement became quite relevant, I found that a lot of people were actively going far to the left or quite centre-right. And I'm curious if there was an issue similar to that evoked a similar kind of formation of your own values.
Yeah, Daniel Andrews.
Yeah, fair.
Daniel Andrews. I think over COVID, more importantly, seeing how willing people were to be controlled. I think how obedient per se people were to our lockdowns. Like, it is insane. We were, what was it? I think 260 plus days in lockdown while the rest of the world was moving on, whilst the rest of our country was moving on. People in Victoria were locked in their homes. We couldn't go more than 5Ks. We couldn't see family members. And the worst part is people were eating at each other, fighting each other. People couldn't have an opinion or speak out against COVID lockdowns without being cancelled. Their rise is the big part of cancel culture. People were ruthless over the word of one little man on a screen who said you couldn't go outside. So I think that kind of put a bit of a shock into my bones to go, shit, like people really are really willing to be sheep, and people are really willing to go at each other and turn against each other because of some person on the screen telling us what we have to do.
Why did you wait then to get your voice heard? Why did it only come about to be last year when you had this burning passion and frustration already back then in uni? Yeah.
Good question, actually. I ask myself that as well. Why didn't I do it then? And I'll say to anyone now who's thinking about doing what I do it. No matter, how you're feeling, you need to bite the bullet. But for me, I think looking back on it, I probably wasn't as brave as what I was. A bit younger. I'm 25 now, early 20s. Like, yeah, you're young, and you do consider and worry more about what people think.
Sure.
Cancel when cancel culture is so intense. I mean, lucky for me, I work for myself now, and my employment life is very safe. My financial life is very safe, whereas a lot of other people don't have that privilege. They've got an employer to worry about, rocking up to work and worrying what your employees are going to have to say. Like, there's a lot bidding on coming out and speaking up. So for me, I am in a good circumstance and at the right time, but nonetheless, I would say to people, there is so much support out there, ready and happy to have you should you want to speak up and say your opinion too.
And then how was that support from those around you? Was it all supportive? I mean, it sounds like you were in a uni environment that maybe wasn't all that supportive, but what about your circle, those closest to you?
Yeah, now, absolutely. When I started things, like you have to be so picky on who you choose to keep close to you in life in general. Like, I personally don't have any time for people that, I've got plenty of lefty friends, and we'll have a crack at each other in the best way possible, in a form of open conversation and debate, knowing that I'm not going to agree with you, vice versa, but we respect and love each other. That's regardless. Great. So that is so important. So for me, with the exception of a few rogue idiots who are not in my life, were never significant in my life, the support has been the best, and it just continues to grow. Like, it's amazing. Is
that one thing that's actually surprised you? Because as a young person who is taking a political view that you could argue is part of the silent minority, or even potentially majority, albeit we don't know, Is that something that's actually surprised you, is the support that you have received?
Yeah, it actually did surprise me. I think when I when I decided to step up and do what I do, I was like, just be prepared to cop it, Calista. Like, you're gonna have to take the bullets, just, grow a few layers of skin, and you're just gonna have to get on with it because, you believe in what you have to say and you believe in the cause. But in saying that, the support, you get some idiots, dropping you crappy comments and saying nasty things, but the support and the love completely outweighs that. Like, I was so surprised the amount of people that have come out of the woodwork just to every single day. I don't get to reply to everyone's comments, but I see them and they are so loving and so embracing, and I'm like, wow, like we need more of me. We need more people to step up and speak, because damn, the base is there of people just to push you forward. It's epic.
Yeah, and it seems like your approach is always very measured, and you actually have a very educational lens versus just you being on the screen and speaking your mind, which is absolutely great as well. But you very often provide like an article or a link to what you're talking about as well, which is, I think, why people absolutely love you and love your content as well. What do you think is the fine line, though, between getting your point across, being educational, and not being just an outraged person online? Because there are a lot of people that do exist in that realm.
I think it is a fine line, but you have to be smart. Like, when I plan most of my content, right, I would say, I think that's really important to have your facts down, and we're all going to say stupid shit sometimes, and that's perfectly okay, as long as there is reason to your rhyme. Like, I do always make the effort to, sometimes I will go on a whim and pick my phone up and say what I need to say, but I would say most of the time I am setting time aside to actually read the articles, to kind of read the room, do a bit of the pub test, float it to see what the vibe is. But it is really important to do your research, know your facts, and then, of course, have your opinion on that research, because, you don't want to fall into the space of just looking like a moron online and giving them also ammunition to call you a moron.
Yeah, and I think with all the noise online at the moment, it's very difficult to, I suppose, put through a message that resonates with a lot of people without them necessarily labeling you as just contributing to more noise.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest issue facing young Aussies like ourselves, though?
The biggest issue for young people in general, I mean, from like a cultural point of view, I would say the inability to critically think. Isn't that ironic? No common sense. But that in itself, I think, is a branch to so many things that we are facing in society as young people. I think with all the cancel culture in itself is so dangerous. If people can't critically think, or we're not creating a society or a space where we're encouraging different opinions and debate and democracy, then everything else is going to fall underneath us, right? Because we're putting faith into the wrong people, because ultimately it's the government who are making the decisions on the cost of living, choosing to where to put our taxpayer money, making the decisions forward. So I think culturally, cancel culture and having the means of confidence and convictions to say your opinion, I get really worried that young kids are just going to be imprisoned to
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about safety? I mean, it was actually the other night where Ilan and I were hanging out with our group of mates, and we were talking about safety in the sense of living in Melbourne and whether we feel like Melbourne is the safest place for us to live long term. And some of us had differing beliefs. I was very much of the opinion that whilst we do bash Melbourne a lot, I still think it is pretty good compared to a lot of the other places in the world.
Yeah.
What is your honest opinion on safety for us going forward?
Not good enough. It is not good enough here. I think safety is just the absolute bare minimum human right that we should have. And in Melbourne, in Victoria, to see the way that it has crumbled over the years. I was saying to you before, I grew up in in Berwick, and this was, I'm 25 now, so 10 years ago, and I was going to parties where all these, machete wielding youths would rock up, and that it was a problem then. And then, we can go into the to the history and the policies of it, but anyways, went into COVID, out of COVID, and then just boom. And it's been 2026 now. It's been a few years now of seeing the trend going upwards.
Yeah.
And it's only now at an election year where we've got our politicians, Jacinta Allen, standing up and saying she's doing something about it. Mate, we had an 18% increase of crime in 2024. And then I think it was another 5 to 10% jump in 2025. And then 2026, the story writes itself. So I think Victoria's a significantly safer place compared to other places. But we're in Australia. We shouldn't be worried to need to arm our houses because kids are going to come in with a machete and jack your car or beat your husband. Yeah. It's insane.
One thing that really annoys me about the dialogue here is that there's a real hesitancy to actually engage in what's going on, and there's a real hesitancy to actually talk about the demographics and the people who are committing these violent crimes. Mm-hmm. And I find that there's, as you mentioned before, the cancel culture doesn't actually help the discussion on this. What I'm worried about, though, at the same time, is that the message isn't getting through. So you would see a lot of young offenders who get bailed the very next day, and they're flaunting the fact that they committed a crime the night before, and now they're out on bail and they're repeating the same crime. And Jacinta Allen is just essentially looking dumbfounded, and then she's trying to propose the bill, do adult crime, do adult time. But nothing has actually worked. So I want to ask you, do you think that What would your first step be in addressing the youth crime issue if you had the ability to do so?
I think we really need to be scrutinising our judges, for one. Ideologically, that's where it all stems. When you go into the justice system, and I think it's a quota of only 80% plus of kids should be getting bail. But the ideology of the judges is, protect the kids first. So all this leniency, and it's so loose that it's just a revolving door. So I would really be scrutinizing and questioning who are enforcing the laws. What are your ideologies? Because, the role of our legal system, the role of judges is to be apolitical and be making a very objective decision on the grounds of community safety. But that's not how our whole government, our whole system works, because we are completely fueled off ideology as well. You just look at our $200 billion of debt. We've got $15 billion in corruption money. We've got, I think, X amount of millions of dollars now just being spent on Indigenous treaty salaries for all the Indigenous representatives. We are, 600,000 police officers short in this state? How do we get to a point where 43 police stations are also closed or reduced in hours that people can't even be seeking help from our officers, and they can't do anything? Their hands are tied. The budget mismanagement, the waste. It's a matter of literally combing through everything where we are spending money and just being so frugal to just strip it all back to basics. We need more coppers. I was listening to a story yesterday. I've got a video coming out, but Aidan Becker, Mernda Station, where he was murdered, right? This Mernda is renowned. Locals are speaking up and they're angry because the youth crime there is insane. Just 2 days ago, I think it was Monday, a 15-year-old girl, 4:00 in the afternoon, is commuting home. She was entrapped in an elevator, beaten, black eye, spat on, had her belongings stolen, her phone stolen. So lucky a good Samaritan, just what Aidan Becker was, has come over to her, given her a phone. This young girl has called her mum in absolute bits, and the mum gets to the station. They call the cops, and the cops have said, "I'm sorry, you're going to have to come down to the police station to report this. We don't have the staff to send there." I've got there is countless stories of this happening, and we should never ever have gotten here. But it's all money.
Yeah, so it seems like from this discussion, I mean, we're talking more so about how we manage the crime itself versus actually stamping out the people that are doing it, which might be a bigger task to tackle, stamping out the people that are doing it, which is actually a nice approach to hear, because I mean, it's very easy and well to say like, okay, well, it's this demographic of people doing them, get them out of our country, rah, 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 which, is all good and well. But you're saying, that's one point here, but we actually need to scrutinize the people in power, the judges, the cops, and we need to start it with them.
Yep. Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And we need to be, what I think the average person doesn't quite understand is that the government officials, despite how important their job is and how much we may or may not look up to them, they are ideological human beings. They have their bias, and sometimes their interests are not necessarily aligned with the greater good, because they define their own greater good via their ideology. And I think one thing we just can't keep bargaining on is just very, very basic needs. We need our ambos need to be looked after, community safety needs to be looked after, and people need to be able to have a roof over their heads and the right to be able to walk the streets and not fear a youth coming at them with a machete. But we have spiraled. We've spent almost $400 million, guys, on this Indigenous treaty process as an example over the last few years. That's not, sure, you might be able to argue that it's a necessity, but it's not compared to the necessity of keeping families safe from being stabbed, like when we're weighing it up. But yeah, we really need to be scrutinizing where these guys' heads are at when they're making these decisions.
What's the biggest frustration for an Australian audience currently? You're on social media, you're posting, you're seeing what people are commenting to you. When it comes to Jacinta Allen per se, and her specifically, what is the biggest frustration that people are voicing to you with regards to Jacinta Allen's action or inaction right now?
Inaction. Nailed that one. I would say the debt blowouts, without a doubt, the corruption, like that just seems to keep just getting, shoved under the rug. Like this is $15 billion of CFMEU corruption money. And that's conservative estimates. It's something more like $30 billion. And it's not even getting any recognition to, have a royal commission take place.
Why do you think that is?
Because she's a part of it, because they're all a part of it. Because why would you want to do a royal commission on something that is going to completely undo your government? Why would you? And that in itself is so morally wrong. Like, I know parties and people want to keep getting re-elected, but they are public servants through and through. Their first job is to look after the interests of the taxpayer, not just from a safety perspective, but from a monetary perspective. And they've clearly failed to do that. Look at the space we are in. We can't afford to put police on our streets, for God's sakes. We can't even afford to patch a pothole. So from a corruption side, people are angry. I think that would be the number one among so many other things.
I think another thing I see, maybe not just in your comment threads, but I think among a lot of fed up Aussies, is the discussion about immigration as well. And it got me thinking, what is an actual mature conversation about immigration? What does it look like without it spewing and deranging itself into some form of bigotry? What's your response to that?
Yeah, I was saying before, it is so important to speak about controversial topics, and I understand that they bring a lot of emotion, a lot of anger, but we cannot lose that ability to sit down and hash it out, because otherwise we will never ever find some kind of middle means to get on with stuff. But look, a rational conversation about how I speak about, I'd like to think I'm somewhat rational, but how I like to think about immigration is, well, it's a matter of now. We need to reflect on where we are at now in this country. We are broken, where it's very clear based on previous events, i.e. December, that our national security is under threat. Housing supply is extremely limited. Our workforce across the board is crumbling. People can't afford to employ. Businesses, at least in this state, are struggling to stay open. We are at a very, very fractured point in history right now. And the best way to address it is not to open the doors and bring people in and give more housing. Like, we're not there. We're not there, and that's a sad fact, but it's nonetheless a fact. And I think the government and people in general just need to focus on just patching the cracks. If it's not papering over the cracks, filling them with concrete so we can lay down that foundation that is strong again. And when we get to that point where Australian citizens are at a means to prosper again, feel safe again, to have a roof over their heads, then of course we can open the conversation up again with immigration. But it's not the right time. We need to be focusing on fixing what's broken.
But even then, that's a very logical and rational talking point when we want to talk about whether Australia caps its immigration numbers, whether we're tighter against illegal immigration and so forth. But even that talking point would be branded by so many as bigoted, as being aligned with the Nazi party of the Nazis of Australia, I suppose. Yeah. And I think that's what makes it so difficult to actually have these discussions. And I find this with Jeremy as well. It's like, if we want to have a logical discussion with someone, sometimes people aren't debating in good faith. No. They're not debating to seek the truth. And I think that's why I've always found politics, and I commend you for doing it, because I don't think I could do it. Yeah. I think politics is it's a blood sport ultimately, and I think that a lot of times most people aren't in the game for good faith reasons. I think there are definitely some that are. But with that being said, something that I have noticed recently, especially with the Ben Roberts-Smith coverage, I found that it was a little bit intentional, I suppose, in the timing. 2 weeks before Anzac Day, and the whole media storm comes. What did you make of that?
Well, so to your point before, sometimes when it comes to these controversial and hard topics, you often just can't argue with stupid. Like, there will be...
That's true.
You can have a very logical, reasoned approach, and regardless, people will still want to tear you apart, because that's the pain that they hold, the insecurity that they hold. So sometimes it is a matter of just having a few more layers of skin and getting on with it, because there will always be people that will always want to brand you a certain way. And unfortunately, we just have to go head first through it, because you can't rationalize with these people. We just have to get on with things.
With that, sorry, Calista, to interject, but what would be your best piece of advice for people then, for people our age, for the younger demographic, where you are in a conversation with someone and they just aren't rational, and it sounds like and it feels like you're just banging your head against a brick wall here, and your point's not getting through, and they're just labeling you an extremist and this and that, and calling you uneducated when you're trying to provide facts, and it just feels like a defensive battle. What is the best way to attack that situation?
Keep the temperature down, be calm, and ask them questions back. The moment that you ask a question is when that's their best unraveling. If they say, you're a racist, I get this online all the time, and it's not because I'm a racist, but because I will simply talk about a topic of mass immigration or crime or assault that's committed by certain groups of people who migrated to Australia. I've got a very hard line to port. You harm a child, you harm a woman, get the fuck out of our country. But I say keep the temperature down. If they're calling you and accusing you and defaming you and labeling you, ask them why. So what is it that is racist? What is it that is extremist? Put it back on them, make them think. They'll do the talking for you. Make them question themselves. But again, you can't rationalize with these people. And if you really can't and you're not getting anywhere, try to find some kind of middle point. Just try to find some kind of rationalization. The best, I'll get so much hate, and I find it, and when people stitch my videos and lefties, and I always make a point to drop a comment or always reply being nice. It's strategic. I can't stand these people, but it is strategic, because it is always better to be the bigger person, because you can't reason with them. But if you're not getting through to them, then just exit the conversation as well. But temperature down, ask some questions back, make them think for themselves. And if they can't think, well, sucks to be them.
Sucks to suck.
Sucks to suck, mate. Yeah. Ben Roberts-Smith, though.
Yes.
media campaign. I think it is disgusting. Once again, a person is innocent until proven guilty in this country, and that's where we need to stand. That is up for a jury to decide on what Ben Roberts-Smith did or did not do. One thing that I can absolutely confidently say is that it is disgusting and has been disgusting how the media has handled themselves and campaigned against Ben Roberts-Smith. You know, his arrest at Sydney Airport, he had said to authorities, when you want me to come in, when you want to arrest me, you can, all right? Like, just tell me, I'll come in, we can do it calm. But they didn't do that, and there's obviously a specific reason as to why they arrested him in Sydney as well, because now I believe he has to be tried in New South Wales. And Channel 9, how did they know he was going to be arrested? It was a tip-off, completely inappropriate. But yeah, I think it's a sad day where a sad sign of the times where the media are more willing to go after someone who you cannot deny the extraordinary things that man has done for our country.
What do you think it actually says about the Australian cultural fabric if we're willing to go against and go after our own in such a way?
I'd say it's really broken. I would say, yeah, it's a sign of the times as far as nationalism and patriotism goes. And again, innocent until proven guilty. The way I will hold firm on the fact until there is a verdict that this man's credibility and what he has done holds more weight in my books than, I know the accusations are heavy, but it's a bold statement to say his credibility weighs more than what the accusations have. Because until such time as it goes to trial, I can't speak on that. I can only speak on this person's credibility as a soldier who has given and would have sacrificed his life in a heartbeat. And yeah, I think on a more positive note, I would say the response to Ben Roberts-Smith and the support of people pushing back to say, you know, you wokey crazies, calm it, put a plug in it, because we're going to stand by him until such time as there is a verdict. But yeah.
And you speak there about like the broken sense of nationalism and patriotism that is being felt right now in Australia in context to this case. And my job as a physio, I treat a couple of ex-veterans, and in the lead up to Anzac Day, obviously a very topical case. And all of these old diggers of ours, they've all said the same things to me during the week, which is, firstly, like you said, innocent until proven guilty. But besides the point of that, they are most frustrated, saddened, and disheartened at the response from the Australian Ministry of Defence in terms of how they've just gone against their own soldiers, gone against their own diggers, and so readily been able to just go against them and bash them before anything has been proven. If your own body is, and your own organisation, your own higher power in a way is so quickly to bash you because they want to be seen as a certain way in the media, that's concerning for our country.
Yeah. They're changed to the woke culture, and it's a pretty sad time when our government and our departments are setting up a $300 million, Office of the Special Investigator to investigate our veterans who went over to Afghanistan. It's the equivalent of something like $19 million per soldier that they're investigating. And again, these alleged war crimes, yes, of course, they hold weight, and we will speak about it when the court case prevails. But it almost feels as if Australia and the media and the left want him to be guilty. Like, there's almost this thirst to get him to...
Like an I told you so moment.
Which I find quite bizarre for someone of what he has done. Like, the average human being, we ask these boys and girls to go over to the Middle East or to go overseas and to perform the unimaginable, right? So there is wiggle room to give this bloke some damn credibility, but...
Do you think it says a lot about how he has responded himself to these accusations, though? Because he's been very upfront to the media, very measured in the way he has spoken, not afraid to show his face. What do you think that says about him?
Great. He's an amazing character. I would say he's brave. He's a soldier, right? He's an incredible human being with the things that he has done. And I think it's amazing that he's standing up into the media. I think one thing he did say after his first media appearance is, I've never run from a fight in my life, so why would I run from one now? It's a whole different fight, whether it's these allegations are going to be true or not, but nonetheless, he's keen to clear his name, and I all respect to him for fronting up and speaking to the media and speaking to the Australian people. I think it actually gives people a bit of hope and a bit of Aussie pride per se. Yeah.
Well, let's hope so. I mean, I think one of the main concerns from the BRS case is that many just are now going to be disincentivized to join the military in the first place.
Absolutely. Why would you? Why would you? Like, you look at the rules of engagement, and I could be so completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure they say that you can kill someone who was unarmed, right? But nonetheless, it comes back to the fact that we tell these boys that we trust your judgment, right? When you're in combat, we can't imagine, because God forbid, what it's like to be fighting freaking terrorists who are shooting at you and blowing up children with suicide vests. Like, it's insane. But we tell these boys, we trust your judgment. So when you've got potential, people wanting to join the army, well, what if in that moment that was their judgment to do something or to kill that person who was a member of the Taliban or a terrorist, and then what we're going to investigate whether that judgment was the right thing? It's a massive grey area.
On that, yeah, no, I totally agree. I think people forget that war is ugly, and something I think about sometimes is that as Australians, most of us are pretty privileged in the fact that we haven't actually had to be involved in any sort of major escalation of war or security threats like many parts of the Middle East are. And I find that many Australians might not have the appreciation of what actually goes into war. Do you think that's part of it too?
Massively. I mean, we're in a bubble. We're in one of the best countries in the world, but I thought maybe a little bit more people would wake up after the Bondi massacre.
Nah, no chance. What are you talking about?
Which was one of the most horrendous things, and if that's going to give you insight into the brutality of these people, and old mate Naveed Akram, he grew up here as well. He grew up in Australia, and it just to show the influence of radical Islam in that circumstance to fester here, let alone what it's like on the forefronts of Afghanistan. It's insane. But yeah, people just don't clock on. They're just so washed out in the brain. It's insane. And we had to physically watch people on our shores get murdered, and people still aren't going, oh yeah, well, wonder what it's like in the Middle East when these boys go and fight these disgusting human beings.
Well, hate speech laws must be the solution then.
Right? Suppressing people's right to speak is always the solution to a politician's problem to make something go away. It's not radical Islam. It's not the foreign ideology that has creeped onto our shores. It's not, scrutinizing who's coming into our country. It's speech.
Speaking of radical Islam there, in the wake of the Bondi massacre, do you think the actual feel amongst your audience, amongst Melburnians, amongst Australians has maybe shifted a little bit, where they're not as afraid to voice their opinion on such a topic now, in terms of identifying that there is a problem here, and they're not afraid to be walking on eggshells anymore because of the frustration about the topic? Yes.
Give and take, though. I still think there's not enough conversation about it. I make a lot of videos about radical Islam. We've got the ISIS brides coming back, probably landing as we speak, enjoying their taxpayer-funded accommodation, no doubt. Assholes. I speak about the hate preachers that have come in and out of this country constantly. We had a hate preacher who radicalised Naveed Akram, one of the Bondi shooters. He was preaching, handing out pamphlets 300 metres away from the Sydney Anzac Memorial Service on Anzac Day,
God, yeah.
right? I speak, and it's disgusting, it's disgraceful. But again, people... And you need to separate. In my brain, it's radical Islam. You don't put them together with, the normal Muslim person who just has come to Australia for a better life or is of a person of that faith. But it's almost as if people couple it together. You can't talk about radical Islam
because... Do you think our government is coupling it together?
Dude, look at Tony Burke. What's his electorate?
25% Muslim, 25%. I think people... it's insane to me. We can talk about radical Islam without talking about Muslims. We're talking about a radical branch of Muslims, of people who practice that, which in itself, all Muslims, no matter what religion, who you are, we should all be banding together to condemn. But I still think there is that kind of, I don't want to talk about radical Islam because it offends Muslims. No, it doesn't. It's talking about extremism.
And I think there would be a variety of people that would agree with you. I think there is a genuine threat, though, of death threats.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's the minority of Muslims who subscribe to a very radical form of Islam, they're the ones that pose the threat. It's not the majority. But I think you're right that there's not enough people banding together and saying, okay, we're all united against this.
Completely. And I just don't think that it doesn't discriminate on what your religion is or who you are or where you are from. It's on the fact of, look at what happened at Bondi. Look at how that happened. Look at who was hate preaching. Look at how we got here. That is something we all can mutually go, stamp it out, get it out of our country. Don't let it in to begin with.
Did you expect a better response from Albanese at the time?
No. No, I expected him to respond exactly how he did. It was just a complete career politician response. Yeah. I'm still disappointed. I'm still disappointed the conversation isn't... We're only 4 months on. 4 months, where are we now? 4 or 5 months on from the Bondi shooting. And I remember I was in London at the time, and I remember opening my phone, and I wish I didn't. I wish a lot of the videos and imagery that went out didn't, because it was incredibly, incredibly disturbing. But we all saw it. We all saw, dead bodies sprawled on the shores of Bondi. And I don't know how that's not shocking enough to still be a point of conversation for everyone.
Yeah.
But it's not. It seems that everyone is so consumed with Palestine and Israel and swallowed up with that we're not talking enough about what happened and how it happened in our country.
Do you think they're consuming the Palestine-Israel content always now as more so just a default to talk about, to almost not talk about maybe some things that are actually affecting us right now in our country? That's just like the default fallback to kind of brush over things.
Yeah, I think when people don't have or anything to talk about, maybe any critical thought, maybe any IQ in general, they'll default to talking about, free Palestine, whereas they couldn't recite the last 10 years of history of what happened between Israel and Palestine. They wouldn't have half a clue, but, still it's across the board though. Right and left, it doesn't discriminate. People, the left are bartering on about Palestine, and then the right are talking about, Israeli foreign lobby, Jewish foreign lobbying groups here in this country. And I'm like, oh my God, it's a headache. It's a headache. I'm like, I think we can all bring the conversation back to the middle of the radical Islamic problem that we have in this country and how we can stop this from evolving, because that is a danger to everyone.
Calista, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm really pessimistic as a young Australian because of that inability to talk a bit freely. And it's the fact that our politicians aren't doing anything that would give me any form of hope. I do think we're on a downwards trajectory, but I need you to sell me some optimism.
Yeah, that's quite a sad point, but I will give you some optimism. Yeah, it's grim. No, I think what I will say is based off, I can only speak for myself and speak for the people that I know in the conversations that I have. People are so damn ready to speak up and change. I have far more people. I'll go out on a night out and I've got 10 people coming up to me over the course of one night saying, I love what you do. I love what you say. I can't say it out loud because I've got a business and kids and family to worry about, but you're doing it on my behalf. And I think as amazing as what it is to have had my following grow so quickly, it is just completely demonstrates how eager people are to speak out against the things that I often talk about. So I do genuinely, and this is not a bullshit opinion or a bullshit statement to make you feel better, but I do think things are changing. I do think this woke fad is slowly fading out, and people are gonna, wake up from the dream and go, that was weird. Ready to go back into some normalcy now, because people, comedy is cancelled. People can't laugh. People can't joke. People can't, misgender. People can't say something without having everything torn apart. And now it's less it's less about, being politically correct, and it's more about tearing people down for having an opinion. And the more that you can hammer out, no matter if you're hard left, hard right, whatever, you have a right to have an opinion as a human being. And I think people are starting to really clock on with that and wanting to jump on the train. But it hasn't existed, right? Like, my platform didn't exist up until 6 months ago, and many others before me, they didn't exist up until recently. So it's only now just happening, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more people jumping up.
Yeah, well, it's encouraging to hear that there's a sample size that you've experienced that actually is jumping off the woke fadness, woke fadness trend. And I agree with you in that department. And with that, do you think we'll see a shift when it comes to voting time finally? I mean, Pauline Hanson's obviously been picking up a lot of support compared to previous years. And do you think we're going to see an effect because of that? And how do you view Pauline also as a person in her campaigning?
Yes, I think just based off the South Australian election, I think they got four or 5 seats. I could be wrong, but that's a sign of the times. I think in Victoria, there's a by-election in Nepean, and the Liberals are going up there, and their biggest contender is One Nation. Like, people have completely shifted to One Nation. You look at Farah as well, Susan Lay's ex-Liberal leader, her seat, that's going to be hotly contested with One Nation, and we're not even at an election time. I think maybe it won't get over the line in Victoria with One Nation. I just don't know if we're fully there yet. I think we're still, battling on the moderate Liberal train. I hope the Libs get in. I don't think there's a realistic case for One Nation yet. But I think federally, come next election, will be, I think there's going to be a sea of orange, I'll tell you that much. But Pauline, I like her. I think, I'm not super clear on her policies. There's things that I go, not super tasteful. Sometimes she can, come out and say stupid shit, which she does. But I love that. I think she's a very convicted woman, and I have to commend her for 30 years of saying this. She's got a bloody set of armor on her, that woman, and anyone who has gone through what she has and the battles that she has had to fight to be here in 2026 to only now in her 70s get over the line and have people resonate with her, I commend her. She's a convicted woman, and I respect that.
Do you think, and I hate to talk about immigration again, but that's one of their main campaigns. I think one of the main criticisms of One Nation is, whilst they might be able to crack down on illegal immigration and so forth, economically, there wouldn't be any plans going forward. So to me, that shows one thing. Australians don't want a whole heap of policies. They just want one policy that's right and then effective. Yeah,
100%. I think, the immigration debate, I mean, you look back on I think in February, give or take, there was something like 3,800 people coming in a day. Like, that's where the numbers are, and it is startling. And you have people on the left come out and say, it's nothing to do with like migrants. We need migrants. So yeah, we absolutely do need migrants, but we need the right kind of people coming into this country, and we also need to have a system that's able to provide for them. We don't have any of that in Victoria. We don't have any coppers. We don't have any houses across the country. We don't have a strong industry to even be able to our hospital system in general. Like, we don't have the infrastructure to support these people. But again, safety concerns, and I think one thing that it's just something that everyone is feeling, and I think Pauline and her party have done a good job to hone in on that, because we need to slow things back.
One thing I did want to touch on before we do wrap up, because this is very much in context to what we did see over the weekend, and that was the Welcome to Country booing. You've made some videos about this as well. What is your take on what we experienced?
What a joke. Get rid of it. Welcome to Country, scrap it. At Anzac Day services is one day of the year, 1 hour of our year, where the only acknowledgement and respects I want to be giving to anyone past, present and emerging are our Anzacs and our veterans, and that does not discriminate on skin colour, Indigenous, non-Indigenous at all. I will say I do not endorse the booing. I was there, and I like it even less so because I have no doubt it was pre-organised probably by those dumbass NSN blokes.
Yeah.
But still, there's a point here and a conversation that needs to be had as to whether it is appropriate. And I do not think it is appropriate at all. I think there's ways where you can tie in Indigenous history and culture. First World War, for example, 2,000 Indigenous people enlisted and went and fought. I think there's ways to speak about that. But Welcome to Country, I think, in particularly by Mark Brown, Uncle Mark Brown, also completely the wrong. I've got more videos coming on this, but he's a bit of a grifter.
What do you think it is about the whole Welcome to Country thing that gets a lot of Aussies into a spin?
I think it's because it's politicized and it's ideological and it's overused. You go to work meetings and
to start of every Zoom call.
Everything. Welcome to country. Acknowledgement of land, rather. School assemblies, when you land on a tarmac across the country every single time. And it's like, we get it. And I think it's less so about actually paying respect to Indigenous culture and more so needing to do it because you're afraid you're going to get cancelled if you don't.
Box ticking in a way.
Yeah, completely. And that's not what it should be about either. But it's become so ideologically adopted where there is an aspect of it where, to get into a bit more of the controversial side of it of, Welcome to Country of, whose land is it, right? There's people here, I get called constantly all the time. You're a colonizer, you're a white, you don't belong here, you can piss off back to where you came from. I'm like, well, I'm from here, like I might be of British descent, but this is my land, this is the only country that I know, it's the only country that I want to know. So there's that ideological debate that has infiltrated the Welcome to Country and the spiritual side of that, to kind of imply that there's possibly a two-tiered situation going on, but that's a whole nother conversation.
That's a can of worms.
Mate. Yeah.
But that's been, and you mentioned there, people canning you for being a colonizer, and you're just saying, well, it's all I've known. I'm from British descent, but the fact that you even have to say that, in my mind, is a joke because my grandparents didn't come from here, nor did Ilan's, and that would be the case for most Australians, and that is the beauty of what made Australia such a great country was that we celebrated our diversity. And I think we very much touched on today's episode that, we want to be that country that celebrates diversity, but celebrating the right diversity 100%. And the right people and the people that want to make this country great and to provide a safety net for us. On that note, we will finish off with a sweet spot question. And this is a question Ilan's waving the...
I was eyeing off those muffins.
Yeah, so we got some white chocolate raspberry, I think, muffins here. And we like to end off with a sweet spot. So a sweet spot of this year for you. So what is a sweet moment that you've experienced for yourself this year? Something that comes to mind that gives you those warm, fuzzy feelings, or maybe it's something that's upcoming for you. What is something that is, making you feel excited and happy right now or to come soon?
I think just the people that I've met and the network and the opportunities that are incoming. But I think one of the best things is going out to restaurants, bars, nights out, going up the street, and you have people come over and sit down and chat with you and say, thank you so much for what you're doing. I really appreciate you and your voice and what you say. And that, because when you're chronically online and doing everything, there's people on the other side of the screen, there's people with real lives, real issues. So I think that is I just feel so honored. That is wow moments for me when people go, oh, you're that chick from TikTok, or they want to sit down and just have a chat and say thank you. That is possibly, you can't get better than that for me. Impacting real people is awesome.
Beautiful. Calista, where can people best find you?
Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Starting to do a bit of YouTube now, but my handle is the Calista Cut, so you'll probably get very sick of me very quickly because I post a lot. Yeah.
Not at all. Thank you so much for joining the Big Bros podcast. It's been our pleasure.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.